All right. Now, where was I? Fifth trip. Let me start you off with just a few island scenes to give you a sense of what Christmas Island is about. You know, beautiful flats throughout the island. It's all walk and wade fishing, which I prefer. You're hunting bonefish and trevally. You're not in a boat trolling around, although you can do that offshore. But most of the fishing I've done is all walk and wade along these gorgeous, gorgeous flats. And you can see the depth of water those guys are fishing in. For the most part, you're targeting water that's about mid-calf, and just beautiful, warm water. And that's what we're chasing, Mr. Bonefish. There are lots of them at Christmas Island. Had a couple of days it was challenging. Not that I wasn't seeing bonefish, I was challenged getting them to take. And so we also have lots of species of trevally, and I'll talk more about each of these a little bit later, but this is a pretty little bluefin trevally of about 2 or 3 pounds. They get a whole lot bigger than that. The island is really warm and welcoming and inviting. They greet you at the airport and give you the headdresses that were weaved that morning by the ladies at the lodge. And they usually put a cold drink in your hand too. The people are just great. They're warm, they're friendly. Their English is, at least the guides anyway, is pretty good, pretty understandable. Not always, but pretty good. So we went with Yellow Dog this last trip. There are lots of other outfitters that go, and I'll talk about the various lodges. I've also got a segment on bird life in here, which is truly amazing. That's a rod tip, and that bird is probably only a few feet off my rod tip coming down out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Right over there. This past trip, we had the most spectacular rainbow. The camera really didn't pick it up, but we had 3 full spectrum of the rainbow here. Oh, wow. And just from one end to the other. The sunsets are fantastic and amazing. All you've seen the Pirates of the Caribbean, and they talk about the green flash. I saw it here this evening. It's kind of cool. So let me cover what I'm going to review tonight. Traveled to Christmas Island. I'll touch upon the species that we're after, and there are many. Bonefish and trevally fishing and the gear you use. The gear for bonefish is very different from trevally. Big rods for trevally. Bird life, I'll share with you meals and lodging, what those look like, the cost, and some parting shots. So enjoy our trip to Christmas Island. You guys really didn't come dressed appropriately, just one in shorts. Probably should have had Hawaiian shirts on, but oh well.
There you go.
There's one that's dressed appropriately. Where is it? Well, Christmas Island is right here in the middle of the Pacific. It's about equidistant from the US and Australia. So you can't get any further away from land than here. I mean, you are way, way, way out there. So we travel to get there is pretty easy. You fly to Honolulu, you overnight in Honolulu, have a good dinner on Waikiki, maybe a cocktail or 4 or 5 or 6, as we did this last trip. And the following day, on a Tuesday, it's important to note that, the following day we'll fly via Fiji Air. It's about a 3-hour flight. The important thing to note, there's one of those a week. Flies on Tuesday, comes back the following Tuesday. Don't miss it, or you spend another week there. Damn.
So you gotta get to Honolulu by Monday?
Yes, I got there, I was a little worried about weather here, getting out. So I flew in on Sunday and spent a couple of days, just walking Waikiki area and, just enjoying the sights and sounds and relaxing a little bit. So, but yes, at least by Monday, you gotta be there. You arrive to warm hospitality. You typically have a coconut handed to you with coconut milk and maybe a little concoction in there. A week later, really exhausted from 6 hard days fishing, you return via the same route, going back to Honolulu and then on to the mainland.
Do they ever have a boat that goes there from Honolulu?
They do. They have a supply boat that's typically about once a month. I don't know that they take passengers, but supplies coming into the island are wholly via boat. So bone fishing, Christmas Island. Why in the world would one travel so far in this quest? Well, any questions? 5-pound bonefish, you heard 50 feet of line go out in 3 seconds. I timed it on the video. And mind you, that was that fish's 3rd major run. The first 2 were into the backing. So yeah, they're pretty darn strong fish. And my first experience bone fishing, my first bonefish, I had a friend tell me, you know, Phil, you'll catch a 17-inch bonefish and you won't even believe it. Fishing an 8-weight rod, it was into the backing a couple of times, and sure enough, it was about 16, 17 inches. They're really strong and fast fish. And that's what makes it so fun. So let's talk about the what we're after here. Not just bonefish. And Rini, I'm going to call on you in just a couple of minutes for some help.
Okay.
Okay? So certainly we'll start with bonefish. And this is a nice average size, probably 2.5, 3-pound bonefish in the shallow water that I had just released or was landing. You know, real typical size bone. You'll cast over bonefish in 5 to 7 or 8 pounds almost every day, and people catch them 10 and above occasionally. They don't get that big by being dumb, so occasionally, but you'll have targets over larger fish all the time. And you can see some of the terrain here that we've got. This is at the Korean wreck on the outer part of the reef, and another real nice bonefish. So let's shift to GTs, giant Trevally, nicknamed Geets or GTs. They're pretty awesome quarry. I like to share that my observation of a GT coming on the flat is very much like a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles. They come onto the flat, all hell breaks loose, and then they're gone. More often than not, you see them and struggle to get a cast to them because they're coming by pretty darn quick. But when you get it right, it's pretty cool. This was my fishing partner, and he hooked this fish. It had come right by me, and I was away from the guide with a bonefish rod only, and he had time to get his GT rod strung up and thrown out and hook this big fish. And that's a 10-weight rod. Look at what it's doing to it. It's a 10-weight rod and a nice about 35, 40-pound GT. Small one. They get much bigger. And I cast to GTs this last trip. Did not hook and land one, but I cast to several in the 50, 60-pound range. And I've hooked, didn't land, one over 100 pounds. And I donated a full fly line and a whole bunch of backing. And he took me 250 yards out, and I'm looking at my reel as I'm watching the backing disappear. And I'm thinking, this is going to end badly, and it did. He took me into the coral and broke me off. So didn't land him, but it was kind of a thrill. We also have golden trevally, or striped trevally, as these are sometimes known. This is a nice, probably 5, 6 pound trevally. This last trip, I had 4 of them buzz by me that were 12 to 15 pounds. And they came by me about from me to her. And I had a bonefish flying on, and I'm scrambling trying to, I didn't hook one. Bluefin trevally, really a pretty fish. You catch quite a few of these. They're smaller as a rule. 5-pound bluefin is a pretty good size one. They definitely get bigger, but there are lots of smaller ones too. Peach-faced triggerfish. Peach-faced triggerfish. These are always sight cast to tailing on the flats. You can walk up within, 30, 40 feet of them and try and put a fly, and they've got their head down munching crabs, and they're really a tough fish to hook. Tough to get them to take. I think this last trip I had about 4 or 5 takes from triggers. And mind you, these are probably 8 to 12 pounds as a rule. And I hooked one, did not land him. And part of the reason you don't land a lot of them, I don't know if you can see those teeth in there.
Yeah, they're sharp. Okay.
They're sharp as can be. They can cut a fly line really easily. And the trick is getting a hook in the outside of the mouth, as with this one I was lucky to do. And so peach-faced triggerfish. This one put its mascara on before I caught him. He was all prettied up and just a beautiful, beautiful fish. A Picasso triggerfish. Picasso triggerfish. It's an art form. They're just beautiful. Or in Hawaii, they're known as rini. Say that out loud for everybody again.
I used to have 2 of those in my saltwater tank.
Yeah, they're beautiful little fish. Caught a number of these over one recent trip, and I've caught them over time. They're just a palette of colors. Little snappers. Sometimes if the fishing's slow, you can get into a snapper area and you can catch dozens of these in a short amount of time. Not very big, they're like this, but they're fun. They pull. Have caught puffer fish a couple of times. You see these all the time. On the bottom, you'll be wading by them, and every so often you'll hook one and land it. And these are a fish that have a gland in them that is deadly poisonous. They're apparently quite good eating, but you better know how to fix one because they're deadly. One of the guides told me that they catch these and the wife will serve them to the husband, and if he's been off philandering, it might sprinkle a little bit. And I said, when did that happen? Oh, a few years ago. A little band-tailed goatfish. I've caught a few of these over time. Again, lots of reef fish out there that you're seeing. A rainbow wrasse. A rainbow wrasse. These are really beautiful fish. It's a painting. And they're truly that deep blue, and you'll see them vividly on the bottom of the flats as you're wading around. Another one, this is a different fish than the prior, and that's not enhanced for color. That's not enhanced for color. That's straight out of an iPhone. So Christmas Island, let me give you a bit of a tour. You saw on the map where this is, just about 130, 140 miles above the equator. It's 32 miles long. It's about 20 miles wide. And let me just hit some points along here. You fly into Cassidy Airport. This was built by the British back in the 1950s or earlier, either shortly after or during World War II. And the airfield is still there, and we're flying into that. The big town of Banana. And a little bit later, I've got a short video. I'll take you on a very brief tour of Banana. The big city is London. And I say big city, the whole island has about 6,000 or 7,000 people. So it's pretty small. It's pretty small. So the lodges on the island, the old Captain Cook Hotel is now been refurbished, and it is the Christmas Island Lodge. And they've done a beautiful job. That's where we stayed on our most recent trip. You're really close to a boat launch and being able to get out pretty quick in the boat. And you're also close to a lot of these backwater areas down along in here. And so it's really a good location that served excellent food too. I'll talk more about that later. I've also stayed at Hickory House. This is right in downtown London on the beach. Pretty nice lodge. Sunset Horizon Lodge is new, at least new to fly fishing. I've not stayed there or visited. And the last one is probably the largest, is the Villages. And it's on the interior of the lagoon rather than on the coast. And so it has an awful lot of fly fishermen that fish out of the Villages. So some other points, the Bay of Rex, as we drove around the island this last trip, it lived up to its name. We saw 4 or 5 vessels aground on the shore of the Bay of Rex, pretty much all torn up. Aeon Field, anybody know what this is famous for? The little strip right here. The Brits did hydrogen bomb testing in the late 1950s and early 1960s. And they did their testing off the south end of Christmas Island. Aeon Field was built to take the bombers up and fly them off the south end of the field and test the H-bombs. And we had a chance to drive on that airfield, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. We've got backcountry. The backcountry are areas really all over in here. And why it's called backcountry is they really don't have a wide open opening to the main lagoon. There are channels that drive water into all these little backwater areas, and really fertile, really lots of fish, great places to go. The fish are not as pressured as some other areas, some of the more popular flats there, and lots of GTs and other Trevally species back in the backcountry. 9 Mile Flat, can you imagine stepping into the water and walking at a very measured pace for 9 miles straight, never running out of flat? It's big, it's huge. I've fished that a couple of times, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Orvis Flat. Orvis was amongst the companies that brought fly fishermen back in the early formative days of Christmas Island, and they got their own flat as a result. Texas and Paris flats are known for some of the larger bonefish. They really sit right by the inlet to the main lagoon from the ocean. And for that reason, it's got some pretty big bonefish. The Y site, we fished this time. The Y site is nicknamed the Y site. It's one of the observation sites from the hydrogen bomb testing back in the day. The Korean wreck. The wreck, a ship from Korea wrecked on this part of the island many years ago, and it's since been dismantled and taken away, but the name is stuck forever. And you're fishing the outer edge of the island inside the reef here, and you'll see some pictures as I go. The Huff Dam is a refuge. Each of the lodges is allowed 1 day into Huff Dam area, and it's a big refuge area, and so you're guaranteed on your day to have that all to yourself, although I've never found anything very crowded out there, in fact, vice versa. And so that'll give you a bit of a tour of the island. So getting around, we do two main modes of transportation: by boat, and these are very, very common at all of the lodges, these big outrigger boats. They can go in very shallow water, which they need to, because you're often picking fishermen up on, a flat, and you might be in this deep of water. And so they can run it up pretty shallow. Another one from Christmas Island Lodge. This is the lodge I fished with this most recent trip. This is Hickory House. They've kind of upscaled their boats. They've got these kind of a whaler design, the pangas or whatever they call them down there, with 140 horse motors. So they've got a reputation of getting to the spots quick. But you can't always run 140 knots or 140 horse motor hard over shallow reefs. So they got to dial it back. And it's pretty comfortable on the boats. You see all the rods up in the rod holders above, and us ready to go fishing for the day. Second mode of transportation are truck days. Christmas Island has a widely varied highway system, and I use that term quite loosely, but we take trucks out to a number of the spots in the backcountry, down to the Korean wreck, down to the Huff Dam, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a real common mode. Here, we're just leaving for the day. This is downtown Banana. Give you a little bit of a perspective on the people and how they live. Basically, most are in the equivalent of what I'd call a chicken coop. Open air, it's warm all the time. You don't need much more. A young boy with a big pile of coconuts in front and driving by some of the homes. This guy here is rich because he's got a car, but you noticed it was up on blocks. They're not good on their maintenance here. So let's wander down the coast a little bit. This is driving down to the Y side or the Korean wreck or Huff Dam. This is Christmas Island Highway 1, and it is not much. You can see 2 lanes, one's improved and one's not. And here we're heading into the Y side. We've got a really nice road here to go in on. A little while later, we actually had to drive through some watered areas that were relatively shallow with the truck on this so-called road. But good fishing in there. So, little picture of the Bay of Wrecks. And here's that Aeon Field. Well, I tell you, being there, just it reeks history. going way back
I'm
in
sorry, I
time.
have to interrupt. Does someone have a red truck parked out here with a dog in it?
Yeah, that's my dog.
I think that someone might have called animal control because the dog was clawing at the window and panting.
I have water in there for
I know nothing about anything, and someone
Okay.
just pulled me out of the gym and
All right.
said the animal control had been called, so thank you.
So, anyway, this is the A Young Field, and all that's left out there is the airstrip. No buildings, no nothing else, just the airstrip, and they use it as about a 1.5 or 2 mile long pathway to get around that other really rough road, and so it's kind of neat to drive on that. Bonefish gear, what do we use? Well, a number of things. Leaders, tippet, and knots for bonefish. When I first went down there, I started off with 8 to 12 pound. I've since been cured of that, and now it's typically 12 to 20 pound fluorocarbon leaders. I usually was using 16 pound this trip, but nonetheless, you hook, excuse me, you hook a big bonefish, you want some backbone to be able to try and stop them because they can be challenging. Couple of key loops we use, lefty craze loop to tie your flies on. It's a good one to know down there. You want motion and those flies to swim free. A perfection loop for attaching your backing to your fly lines. I had to practice before I went, and I still look to the guides to tie my perfection loops. I've never quite figured that one out. So, bonefish flies, we're running a whole bunch of different ones. For the most part, size 6. That's all I tie on for Christmas Island, and they work just fine. This is a little Christmas Island special in orange. You can see crystal flash for the body and the under, and a bright orange head. Christmas Island special in yellow. Here's Christmas Island special. I added some rubber links to it, and that worked well. Crystal Beach Persuasion. This is a fly I designed, and it's turned out to be my very best pattern down there on Christmas Island. And the Crystal Beach Persuasion was named at the Crystal Beach Lodge. One of the guys I was fishing with kept asking me to tie more and tie more and tie more, and I brought my tying gear, and so it got named the Crystal Beach Persuasion, not to be confused with that song of a similar name. A little one-armed bandit crab pattern. I didn't fish crabs, or I never have really fished crabs that much, but a lot of guys nowadays are going out onto the flats with 3 rods, one for bonefish, one for triggerfish, and one for trevally. And for triggers, you're probably opting for crab patterns. And so this is a good little crab pattern. I've caught my triggers on bonefish flies, and they kind of work well when they don't get bit off the end of the tippet. Another little crab pattern, a little orange brown that you might use over a different colored sand. Little tan white clousers. I don't use these a lot for bonefish, but I will use them for trevally, and I picked up a real nice bluefin this trip on one of, just about a size 4 clouser. So speaking of trevally, I didn't mention bonefish rods in here, but I use 8 weight. You could use as small as a 6 weight, will handle a bonefish just fine. However, you need to be able to cast in the wind. You're typically fishing in 10 to 25 mile an hour winds, hopefully coming from your back, so you can just throw it with the wind rather than against it. But that doesn't always work, because sometimes the bonefish is over there. And so you need a fast action rod that can cast in the wind. And you don't have to cast far for bonefish. From me to Rini is a real common distance, 20, 30, 40 feet is typical. If you start casting farther than that, you're laying too much line on the water and they spook. And so you want to ideally cast close. So Trevally, Trevally are the gangsters of the flats. And this one was a neat story. We had just come off a very, very shallow flat, and we were in about, that deep of water. We had bonefish up on the flat. The guide recommended leadering down to 8-pound test and a size 8 bonefish fly. So we finished that area, and then we moved over into this area. And as we walked up to this little backwater, the guide says, "Nervous water, cast." Well, I flipped the cast out there, and this trevally blew up on that little size 8-pound test tippet fly. I hooked him, and guide says, "I'm going to go over and have a smoke." Fortunately, I was in an area without much coral, and I did manage to land this guy. And he's probably 12, 15 pounds. Really a nice size fish, especially on an 8-weight rod with a size 8 fly. So Trevally rods and reels, 10 to 12 weights. If you're going to chase the big guys, 12 weight is probably preferred. They've got to be able to handle big fish. There are many trevally in the 40 to 60 to 80 to 100 pounds on Christmas Island. They're not caught regularly. 30 and 40 are a little bit more routine, but 100 it's rare to land. I hooked 4 one day on a little bitty pancake flat. I'll show you in a couple of minutes. And I lost 2 fly lines, broke another one off, and had the 4th one come off. And so in about an hour. They were, this was 2012, and they were chumming fish up onto the flat. They generally don't do that anymore as a rule. The lodges have all kind of policed chumming, and so it's not done as a rule. But large arbor reels, 6 foot of 80-pound test leader, and 250 to 300 yards of backing. I needed all of that and probably some more on that big 100-pounder I hooked. And you need an excellent drag. Probably one last thing you want is some pliers to tighten that drag. Because I know when I tried to stop that fish, he was having none of it. I gained 10 feet of line and he'd take 30. And this went on for 20 minutes until he took me into the coral. So trevally flies are big, 4 to 8-aught streamers. Black purple is probably the preferred, but also white and red, tan and gray, bait fish patterns. These fish really target bait fish. There are small trevally, this little bluefin, probably took a bonefish fly. Some nicer ones. This is down at the Korean Wreck on the outer reef area. And this is probably about a 7 or 8 pound trevally. And a little bluefin up close. Beautiful colors. Beautiful colors. And a little GT that's probably 4 or 5 pounds taken on a bonefish fly. I mentioned hot dog. Little pancake flat out in the middle of the lagoon. I snapped this picture in a gully washer of a little shower that came through, and our guys are still out there fishing. Only lasted about 10 minutes or so, and then it was clear again. But boy, did it rain for a few minutes. And you can see, or you can't see very far beyond those guys. It was just pouring. But that's the extent of the little flat. And back in the day, they were chumming up trevally on this out of the deep water. And some of the fish that were taken, these pictures are a little bit grainy because they're older. But you can see this trevally swimming right underneath the boat. The guide was dropping some chum down to him, and he was feeding aggressively. That's a big fish. That's probably 60, 65 pounds. He's a big guy. He's about 6'7". He's tall and big. And you can see in the background, that's Willie George. I don't know if any of you know him. He's pretty well known down in the San Francisco Bay Area, but Bill King has got another fish in the background while he's releasing this one. And just a couple of pictures of some of the flies that people had tied on. And I got just a brief video, a little bit grainy, so bear with it, but nonetheless.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We casted a number this last trip that were that size and bigger. One of my friends had a big GT that was probably 60 pounds and was casting a popper at it and had 2 good casts over it.
Barely get it up there.
Yeah. That's a big fish. So that's Trevally out there.
Are those
So-
floating lines or those?
Yes, yes. Unless you're trolling out offshore, you're gonna fish a floater on all these flats. For the most part, you're not fishing very deep. You can control the depth a bit with the weight on the flies, the eyes on the fly. But for the most part, man, if you're fishing, this deep, that's deeper than most of what we fish there. So, talk about the guides a little bit. They are freaking amazing. Just freaking amazing. The first guide I'll introduce, Moana. I had the opportunity to fish a couple of trips with Moana. He's legendary, and he was the very first guide, Bonefish guide on Christmas Island, and had over 40 years guiding. Just a real legend, and you got a good guide when he's got wading boots that are covered with algae. He spends a lot of time in the water, and these are a little bit worn, so he's still working them. Peter is the head guide for the Christmas Island Outfitters. Really a great guy. I had a chance to fish a couple of times with him, and just excellent guide. Great sense of humor. Really a lot of fun to be around. The surprise here for me this last trip was fishing with a female guide. Up till the last 2 years, that was unheard of on Christmas Island. It's pretty much a male-dominated society, and that glass ceiling is beginning to break. At Christmas Island Lodge, they've hired a number of female guides, and they're starting to train them and get them out there. I had the pleasure of fishing with Ari for a day, and really a great experience. Really knowledgeable, very pleasant to be with, and wanted to fish at the pace that I wanted to fish at. Some of these guides want to move quickly. On Bonefish, I like to move on a slow saunter, and so she was fun. Bea, I fished with. He doesn't even wear polarized glasses. We were down at 9 Mile Flat one day, and Bea says to me, 30 feet, cast. Don't see the fish, Bea, cast. So I put a cast down. Long strip, long strip, long strip, long strip, short strip, short, fast, long strip. And all of a sudden, my terminal knot's coming in the tip top of the rod. And I turn around to start to look for another spot to cast, and all of a sudden, it zips out. Never saw the fish. It was from me to her. Never saw him. But he saw him, which is a good thing. Just a couple of pictures of a couple of our groups with the guides there. Come back to Moana with a big triggerfish out on Hot Dog and a GT And unfortunately, he passed in 2016, and it's really a great loss to the Christmas Island guide community because he trained most everybody that's guiding today. So spotting fish, Ghost of the Flats is the nickname. Ghost of the Flats. And they can be, and sometimes not. My first bonefish, we were down at the Korean wreck on the outer reef. And the guide says, why don't you walk down there about 50 miles and we'll wait for the tide to go out a little bit farther. If you see something, cast to it. And I'm standing there for about 5 or 8 minutes, and all of a sudden I look up, and from me to the wall, there's bonefish swimming by. I went, huh. I flip a cast out. He came, ate it, zipped out into my backing, reeled him in, landed him, and I went, man, this is easy. This is easy. I've since learned better. Trust your guide. Those guys are amazing. They can see fish, and just amazing. And I can see fish really well in some circumstances, but not anything like these guys. They see what you don't. I fished with Taco this year on a real cloudy day. I could not see the fish for the life of me, and he was putting me on fish after fish after fish after fish. They'll give you guidance on direction and distance. 30 feet, cast, long strip. He's got it. And sure enough, my friend from Denver hooked this fish and ended up landing it. Nice little, probably 16, 17-inch bonefish that took him into his backing on an 8-weight rod. So some variables that we run into, the bottom color, and you've seen a number of slides so far with widely disparate bottom color. The fish can change their tone of the back to match the bottom color. On this, I might expect them to be a very light gray. Down at the Korean wreck, they're often a very dark green. Same bonefish, just different mini ecosystem. The direction of the fish is important. Those coming straight at you, you can see the back of the fish, which is the most prominent part of the fish. They're coming straight at you. More often than not, they're easy to spot, but they don't always come straight at you. The water depth, you can see we were targeting water probably about this deep. When you get into water this deep, it makes a huge difference. And when you're in water this deep, you're probably blind casting because it's really hard to see. The tide's moving, the wind, the sun position. This most recent trip, probably from about noon to 1:30 in the afternoon, I lost all vision of being able to see bonefish. The sun was up high, coming straight down on him, couldn't see him. The guide was seeing him, I was not. 1:30 came and went, all of a sudden I started picking up fish again. So the sun position is pretty important. They're sometimes really easy to spot and sometimes not. I've casted a few rocks before. And you can see the back on this one is pretty clear. This is a fish I got hooked that I snapped a picture of or two. They work into the current, and the ideal position is the wind and current coming from behind you. If you've got a 20-mile-an-hour wind, man, you really want to cast with it rather than into it, because sometimes it's almost impossible casting into it. Casting crosswind, you want to get real low to the water and cast and tuck it in tight. And so you can see the color change. Here we're over a very sandy bottom. Look at the color of the fish. And that fish is right on the surface, and you can see how hard he is to see here. Imagine if he's in a foot and a half of water. They can almost disappear. A side view, here you got a little bit better view of that fish. If you're at a different sun angle, that fish would disappear. And so it depends greatly as far as being able to spot. Looking at channels coming in, this is a bonefish highway coming in, coming off the deep water and onto the flat. These are good areas to target in and around that bonefish highway. So, and you can see a different color down here entirely down at the Korean wreck, very different. Beautiful country though, love fishing down here. So a word about the sun. You're 140 miles north of the equator. The sun is intense. We cover up head to toe with buffs, with gloves. I don't use that much sunscreen because I cover everything. SPF 50 shirts and pants and so on and so forth, because you don't want to be like these guys that went out wet wading in shorts. That's going to peel in about a day. So let me introduce you to bird life. Bird life on Christmas Island is probably one of the reasons that I get really jazzed about going there. Christmas Island, you saw where it is, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Most birds spend their life at sea, and they only come onto Christmas Island to nest, and they never see people. They don't know what we are, and they're not afraid of us. We're an anomaly to them. And so the birds let you get really close and up personal. This is a little wildlife refuge right at the mouth of the lagoon. And just look at the raw number of birds in the air right there. I mean, that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And there's just as many more sitting on the ground in that location. Yeah, a little male frigate fully inflated in his glory. Don't you just love the colors in this picture? I mean, the deep green and the red and the black and the blue sky and yes. I asked one day, they were stopping for lunch and we were near a bird nesting area, and I said, I'll eat lunch later. Drop me off on that little spit over there. I want to go take some pictures, and this is one of the ones that came out of that. I had my D810 Nikon with a 35 to 300 lens on it, and so I was able to zoom pretty good and caught this one really nicely.
Yeah.
Our drive down to the Korean wreck, we had to shoo a few of these guys out of the way. This is a big sooty tern nesting area, this particular trip. We saw the same this last trip, but they were in a different area of the island and not right on the road. Although they're not nesting on the road, they're gathering gravel here, but here they're nesting. And you can just see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of the sooty terns. And they're very careful building a nest. Very careful. Spot on the gravel. There aren't a lot of predators out there. Here's a little booby chick. We were able to walk up and.
So they have bluefoot boobies on there too?
They do. They have multiple different kinds of boobies. Here's our little booby chick. I don't think this is a blue-footed one.
Well, when they're young, they don't have the blue feet.
Okay.
When they become adults, then they get the blue foot.
I don't know my different varieties extremely well, but you know, I just love seeing all the birds. Another bird nesting. That's a tropic bird. They've got a really long, about a 3-foot tail. These orange filaments that come out on that bird. And this is under a little tree on the nest, and he let me come. Boy, from me to her, he was starting to get a little nervous, so I backed off, but was able to snap a picture. These guys, see them out on the flats all the time. I don't know what species of booby that is, or if it's a different, but they will fly right up to you. And this guy, I'm not zoomed on my phone taking this. That bird came probably within 3 feet of my chest looking at me. So pretty cool to see. Our little masked booby, beautiful birds, and a pair of masked boobies. And see the chick there, kind of guarding right behind them. So, yeah, you'll see these all the time out there. Really beautiful bird. Couple more male frigates over the lagoon. So lodging, let me jump away from birds and where do you stay? This was home base for our trip this year. This is Christmas Island Lodge, very, very comfortable. Yeah, we sat out in these chairs drinking just about every night, having a rum cocktail or a beer or two or a little bit of, they poured just the very best boxed wine, as you can see. Yeah, really comfortable, and that's where we had dinner every night, right around this table. There were 12 people at the lodge that week, and that was our dinner. The lodging generally are two-person bungalows or shared rooms. They're not fancy. They're not fancy at all. You pretty much got a twin bed and you got a sheet. And most nights you don't use the sheet because you don't need to. It's warm there. The first lodge we went to the first year did not have air conditioning. Every lodge I've been to since does, and that's kind of standard now. I was down there for the first time in 2012, but air conditioning, albeit not very effective, but the ocean breeze keeps things cool, so you're comfortable. You've got a private bath for each room. The showers are refreshing. They generally don't have hot water heaters and really don't need them because they don't want people taking 20, 30-minute showers because water's a pretty precious commodity there. And so your showers, you walk in from bone fishing fully clothed, shower down, clothes stripped down, and change into shorts and a Hawaiian shirt for cocktail hour. The ocean breeze really keeps things cool, and often we kept our windows pretty wide open at night, keeping things cool.
Are they biting bugs?
At times there are mosquitoes, but I've only had one trip, and it was during an El Nino year when Christmas Island tends to get a lot of rain, that we had any mosquitoes. Other than that, no. Out of 5 trips, 4 of them were bug-free pretty much. You might have some cockroaches running around in the room, but they don't eat much. So Christmas Island Lodge was the one we stayed at. That was the Captain Cook, the old Captain Cook hotel. The Ickery House is in London, right on the beach, right on the outside of the island. The Villages is on the interior lagoon, right on the beach, and one of the bigger lodges on Christmas Island. They host typically probably 25 or 30 people in a week at max capacity. Most of the rest of the lodges are 8 to 12, so a very nice size. And then the Sunset Horizon Lodge, and I don't know a lot about this one. Flywater Travel used to go to the Shark Place, and the owner passed away and it kind of shut down, and so they moved over to the Sunset Horizon Lodge, but I hear it's not bad. So this is our cocktail hour, sitting there watching the waves come in. Not a bad place to be. Not a bad place to be. So meals. I would characterize meals as ample, but not fancy. Although they do some pretty nice stuff. Typically in the morning, you're gonna get eggs and bacon and toast and maybe some PB&J to go on the toast. Filling enough to get you through the day, or at least the morning. Lunch is typically on the flats, and they'll pack up a sandwich and probably an energy bar and a piece of fruit and some cold beers and an ice chest. And it'll be a cold cut and cheese lunch. Again, nothing fancy, but enough to keep you going. I take snacks with me, like some mango slices and other things like that. Appetizers in the evening with cocktails, tuna sashimi, fresh from the ocean, and some breadfruit, and a little wasabi with some soy sauce. Ooh, good stuff, good stuff. We missed this last trip because their boat motor was down and they couldn't get out to fish for tuna, which were breaching right out past the surf line from the lodge. And so we didn't get tuna sashimi, but dinner is a variety of things. They have a lot of warm water lobsters. And typically you'll have lobster at least once during the week. They do a lot of chicken, tuna steaks, steak. They might even do a whole roasted pig. So just a couple scenes of our whole roasted pig. The lodge we stayed at Christmas Island didn't do a whole roasted pig. Instead, they did a whole variety of chicken dishes and beef dishes, and they probably had 15 different dishes they served that night. It was way too much food, and it was all very good. Word about trip costs. Christmas Island, from a lodge perspective, is probably one of the less expensive. In aggregate, with airfare, it's probably in the range of many other places. Your flights are gonna take a bite out of your trip costs. They're probably gonna run you, getting to Hawaii and then down to Christmas Island. I think the Christmas Island flight round trip from Honolulu was about $1,500. And so I used miles going to Hawaii. So whatever you can get a ticket to Hawaii for. The outfitter fee this year was $38.50. They have bumped it for 2026. Apparently all the lodges are going up. A couple things behind that. The island nation of Kiribati has increased their fishing license fee from $50 to $250 to come on the island. This lodge includes your fishing license in it. Not all lodges do. And so that's part of the reason they've kicked their prices up. And the other reason is probably for groups like mine, this last trip, that drank an awful lot of beer that they're importing from New Zealand at about $5 a can. Yeah, but they cover that in your cost here. So they're gonna bounce it a little bit, but still, I think it's pretty economic. The only thing that's not included would be guide tips, and that's kind of on your honor. Most of my early trips, it was $25 per person per day for guides. I think we're spending more than that now. About 10 to 15% of your total lodge costs is what they recommended for tips. And that's split between guides and lodge staff and everybody else. It's kind of nice to leave an envelope at the end of the week and be done. So as we're closing out, let me just leave you with some of the things I've seen out on Christmas Island that have caught my eye. This dad and son out harvesting coconuts on his little motorbike, heading back home to mom. So usually there's one night where you have a big hoorah. The last night, or in the case of Christmas Island Lodge, they did that. I think on Sunday night, and we left on Tuesday, so a day early. This one's actually at the old Shark Place, and the ladies came in and performed for us some native dances, and just really friendly, warm people, really friendly. The lodge this year brought in some young kids to play musical instruments. What do you think those are made out of? PVC pipe. Pretty cool, pretty ingenious. They don't have a lot to work with there. Oh, my sound isn't turned on. I don't see a sound button handy. it was working earlier, but they were playing the tubes. And they played for about 45 minutes or an hour for us that night. It was really pretty fun. Really pretty fun. So, cocktail hour in a cold coconut. Not a bad way to go. Anita and Tim are licensed to retail fermented and spirituous liquor. Don't know what spirituous liquor is other than in Mexico. Some tequilas I've tried are probably fit that definition, but
Wasn't that the ghost you see after you get drunk?
yeah. I swear to God, our group did not. I swear to God. They recycle, but they gotta get enough to make it worthwhile to send it overseas.
It looks like Coca-Cola and Sprite in the front.
Uh,
The color, look at the colors.
yeah, they're,
Heineken probably.
Heineken.
that's 4X from New Zealand. That is
okay.
Heineken, or another New Zealand beer. I can't remember what they all were. I see a Coke can or two, but yep, that's a lot of cans. Every lodge I've been to has a board, and this one is who and how you're getting to where you're going, who you're fishing with, your transport, and the daily tides, kind of the schedule for breakfast and dinner and so on and so forth, the location that you're going to. And so every guide or every lodge has something similar to this.
So there's a guy named Taco.
I fished with Taco on my very last day. He was stellar. He was really good. He could see bonefish when I couldn't. And young fellow. Taco had an interesting background. He was from, God, what nation was it? Not, I think from Fiji. I was asking him how he came to Christmas Island. He said, well, I came from Fiji on vacation and COVID hit and they shut down the island and I'm still here. He's married and has a kid now. So he's a Christmas Island resident. So you can see a lot of signs of things being built, in this case by the Seabees and Marines on Christmas Island. The primary school there, Australia, China, and the US have all contributed a lot to Christmas Island's economy. A young lady in her dress uniform going off to school in the morning. Crew coming back in from harvesting coconuts. Had a great day out there, I think. Through this one, they just had a fun. These kids were hanging on the rope, and the boat guy was trying to throw them. And they were running around through the weeds, and all of a sudden we heard this big, loud noise, and they'd hit a reef with the motor and blew it off the back of the boat. Boy, there was going to be some splaining to do with that night. Just the laundry hanging out. Love this little guy carrying a coconut into mom in the morning. Some of the kids playing had some really expensive toys they found. Somebody broke a suitcase and now it's something they're playing with. This was taken out of the old airport waiting room. Right out the door as a pig walking by. It's a rustic area. You can get your brooms and strings and pillowcases and other things at this shop. And sign to the airport, Cassidy International. Yeah, just a pretty sunrise this year going out. Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, what kind of plane did you fly into?
That one, 737 is a rule, like a 737-200 on Fiji Airways. And, it's got a nice landing strip. It's old, but it's, still works. Still works.
Only the one terminal?
One terminal, one gate. And they're not very efficient getting people through. So as we were leaving, just some memories out there of some great times, some beautiful country. This was one of the, painting right at one of our lodges here at Christmas Island Lodge, and the real thing.
Beautiful.
So bucket list, fly fishing Christmas Island. Who wants to go?
Everybody wants to go.
If I can draw enough interest, I'm planning to host a trip to Christmas Island in April 2026. And so just got a couple folks so far. I probably need a minimum of about 6. So if y'all are interested, I'm gonna kick a note out to the membership and ask if anybody would like to be included.
Great presentation.
Yeah, that's super.
What's the seasonal schedule for fishing?
Tides are much more important than month.
Okay.
On the equator, doesn't vary. So if you want to go in August, of course it's nice here. You probably want to go in winter when it's cold here and go warm, but it doesn't matter much. Tides are much more important.
What about, is there a rainy season and a dry season?
I don't know the answer to that really very well. I've never had huge amounts of rain there, except one day during that El Nino trip. Boy, we got belted. And other than that, it's typically passing showers. So you might get rain, for 10 or 15, 20 minutes, and then it's gone. This year we had our last day out. We had a big rainstorm on the north side of the island. We were fishing kind of in the mid part of the island, so we had some showers come through, but never really impacted it. It made things harder to see bonefish,
Right.
but didn't impact fishing. I've only had one day that I would consider a rainout in 5 trips. So
Do you usually go in April?
I've always gone in like February to April, in that range. I try and choose tides, more importantly. I didn't schedule this last trip, and our tides, we were right at a full moon. And so the tides were peak. I would recommend against that. I go at a mid-cycle, so the tides aren't quite so extreme. The flats de-water really quickly when on a big tide change. And so it gets you longer fishing. Doesn't mean fishing at low tide doesn't occur, it does. But you're out more on the edges of the flats rather than in the main flat.
I noticed on your board you had 2 people per guide. Is that standard?
Yeah, 2 people per guide is typical. This lodge had a number of younger guides in training. So we had individual guides for almost everybody all week,
The other
which
person
was
was,
kind of nice.
do they hold your extra rod?
Yep, yep.
So he's holding 4 rods.
Gotta cut you off now. We gotta do this raffle real quick. So pull out your tickets. And thanks, Phil. Great presentation.
Thank you.
You don't even have to go now with all those pictures.